At 11:40 p.m., the sky over Murrow was pitch black. No moon, no stars, just radar blips and 12 Japanese bombers closing in. Below 20,000 American troops slept unaware that one man nearly out of fuel would decide who lived until morning. Below those sleeping tents, the war had a heartbeat, and it was counting down. Major Carroll Smith sat hunched inside the Black Widow's cockpit, surrounded by darkness so complete it felt solid. He was 26 years old, 43 combat missions behind him, 4 enemy aircraft already burned into the ocean. Tonight, none of that mattered. What mattered was the radar screen glowing behind his right shoulder. 12 contacts, 12 Japanese bombers, all inbound. For 2 straight weeks, the enemy had come every night. Sometimes bombers, sometimes suicide aircraft, testing the thin American defenses at Murrow. 334 air raid alerts in 14 days. The engineers below were racing to finish 2 airfields that would decide the coming invasion of Lingayen Gulf. The Japanese understood that if those runways survived, the invasion would be unstoppable. Smith's squadron had arrived just 3 days earlier. They were exhausted, unfamiliar with the field, and painfully few in number. And right now, only 1 aircraft was airborne, 1 pilot, 1 radar operator, 1 airplane. If even a handful of bombers slipped through, men would die in their sleep. Construction would stop. The invasion clock would stall. Smith felt the pressure settle. In his chest, not fear, but responsibility. He tightened his grip on the throttles as the intercom crackled to life. "Contact moving south," the radar operator said calmly. "Multiple returns." Smith exhaled once. Then he pushed the Black Widow forward into the dark. Smith already knew the numbers, and they terrified him. 1 P-61 Black Widow, 12 incoming bombers, less than 3 hours of fuel. Night fighting wasn't about heroics. It was about math. Cold, merciless math. Each interception took time. Time to climb, time to vector time, to close, time to fire. 10 minutes per target if everything went right. 10 minutes while the other bombers kept flying. Even if Smith shot down 3 or 4, the rest would still reach Murrow. And 1 bomber was all it took. Fuel dumps, ammunition stacks, engineers sleeping in canvas tents. A single explosion could turn the airfields into a graveyard and delay the invasion by weeks. Weeks meant more landings under fire, more dead Americans on the beaches of Lingayen Gulf. Smith had trained for this moment for 18 months. Radar intercepts in total darkness, gunnery without a horizon, flying by instruments while your instincts screamed that you were falling. Night combat was unforgiving. There were no second chances, only sudden silence. Behind him, Lieutenant Philip Porter watched the radar scope like a surgeon monitors a heartbeat. Green blips slid across the screen, each one an aircraft the enemy believed was invisible. Porter's voice stayed calm, professional. It had to be. Panic would kill them faster than flak. "Multiple targets," Porter said. "Different altitudes, different headings." Smith stared into the black windshield. No moon, no stars. The Japanese had chosen this night for a reason. Darkness was their shield. They didn't know it was about to become their enemy. Smith pushed the throttles forward. The twin engines roared. The Black Widow climbed into the void, not hunting with eyes, but with radio waves and trust. Every mile closed burned fuel. Every decision narrowed the margin between survival and sacrifice. Somewhere ahead, the first bomber was flying straight and level, confident, unaware, already dead. Smith leaned into the climb. The hunt had begun. The radar blip steadied at 4 miles. Smith couldn't see a thing outside the canopy, just endless, black, thick clouds, swallowing any hint of horizon. This was the kind of darkness Japanese crews trusted, the kind that made them believe they were alone. Behind Smith, Philip Porter leaned closer to his scope, reading the subtle movement of light like a language only he understood. Bearing 035. Altitude 8,000. Closing. Smith adjusted course by instinct and training small corrections smooth hands. Too sharp, and he'd overshoot. Too slow, and the bomber would slip past him forever. Fuel ticked away with every second. The Black Widow climbed steadily, engines humming with restrained violence. At 2 miles, Smith switched to his own radar display. A single glowing mark appeared, faint, then stronger. The enemy was there, real, unaware. The Japanese bomber flew straight and level, disciplined, confident. No evasive movement, no warning radar, no idea death was sliding in behind it, silent and unseen. Smith eased closer. 1,000 yards, 800, 600. Then finally he saw it. A shadow against darker clouds. Exhaust flames flickering like dying embers. 7 men inside that aircraft, believing the night still belonged to them. Smith felt no hatred, no triumph, just focus. He slipped the Black Widow beneath the bomber's tail, slightly low, perfectly aligned. The gun sight glowed faintly, steady as a heartbeat. 4 cannons, 800 rounds. He wouldn't need many. Range 400, Porter said quietly. Smith centered the target. Breathed once, then squeezed the trigger. The night exploded. Red tracers tore forward, ripping through wing and fuel tank. For a fraction of a second, the bomber existed, then it became fire. The right wing vanished in a white-orange flash. The aircraft rolled, burning, falling. Smith pulled away as the wreck plunged toward the ocean, lighting the clouds like a funeral torch. 1 bomber down. He checked the gauges. Fuel already dropping faster than he wanted. 11 enemy aircraft still flying. And the night was far from over. The fireball vanished into the ocean, and with it went any illusion of time. Smith didn't celebrate. He didn't look back. His eyes dropped instantly to the fuel gauge, already down more than he'd planned. 1 kill had cost him precious minutes, and minutes were the only thing standing between the airfields and disaster. More contacts, Porter said. No urgency, just facts. Multiple, still inbound. Smith turned south, pushing the Black Widow harder. The engines responded, but every extra knot drank fuel at an unforgiving rate. Somewhere ahead, another bomber was closing on Murrow, flying steadily toward men who had no idea how close death was. This was the cruel reality of night fighting. You could do everything right and still lose the war, 1 bomber at a time. The second contact appeared on Smith's scope, farther away than he liked. Geometry worked against him. The bomber was closer to the target zone than the last one had been. If Smith was late, anti-aircraft guns would open up. Maybe they'd hit it. Maybe they wouldn't. Either way, bombs could still fall. Smith shoved the throttles forward again. The Black Widow surged, engines howling in protest. Speed climbed. Fuel fell. The margin narrowed. Range 6 miles, Porter called. Altitude 6,000. Another Betty. Smith descended, careful not to overshoot. He slid beneath the bomber's tail, invisible in the darkness, the aircraft's black paint swallowing what little light existed. The Japanese crew flew straight and level, calm, methodical, unaware. They were already marked. At 1 mile, Smith saw it clearly now. The same fragile silhouette, the same fatal weakness. He lined up the shot knowing there was no room for mistakes. Too long a burst wasted ammo. Too short risked a miss. And there were still more bombers out there. 350, Porter said. Smith fired. The cannons thundered. The shells struck home. Flames erupted along the fuselage, racing through fuel lines like lightning. The bomber rolled and fell, burning gone within seconds. 2 bombers destroyed. Smith exhaled and then looked at the gauge. Less fuel, fewer minutes, and still more enemies between him and dawn. The night tightened its grip. Smith had no time to dwell on the second fireball fading behind him. His fuel gauge slid lower, edging toward the red. Most pilots would already be thinking about turning back. Smith couldn't. Porter's radar still showed 2 more contacts closer now, split by altitude and distance, both racing toward the airfields. Smith had to choose. He took the higher target first, climbing hard. Climbing burned fuel, but diving later might save it. It was a gamble stacked on another gamble. Below him, the second bomber continued south unchecked. If Smith guessed wrong, bombs would fall. Contact 7 miles, Porter said. Fast. Maneuvering. This one was different. The radar return jittered, shifting left, then right, climbing, descending. The pilot on the other end knew something was hunting him. This wasn't a lumbering Betty. This was a Nakajima Ki-49, faster, tougher, and armed with a tail gun that could kill a careless night fighter in seconds. Smith adjusted his approach, sliding low and to the side, into the bomber's blind spot. Tracers suddenly flashed past his canopy. The enemy gunner had seen him. No more surprise. Smith closed anyway. At 400 yards, the bomber twisted again, trying to shake him. Smith held steady, forcing the Black Widow to obey. The gun sight settled. He fired a longer burst, this time longer than doctrine, longer than he liked. The shells punched through the fuselage. The right engine exploded. The bomber flipped inverted and fell burning, spinning toward the sea. Smith broke away hard. 3 bombers destroyed. He checked the fuel gauge. Below 30%, critical. And 1 last bomber, low fast and dangerously close to Murrow, was still out there. Smith knew what that meant. 1 more fight, 1 last chance, and no room left for mistakes. Smith descended hard, letting gravity do what fuel no longer could. The Black Widow sliced through the darkness, dropping toward the final contact. The bomber he'd been forced to ignore earlier. Now it was dangerously close to Murrow. Close enough that Smith could see searchlights probing the clouds, anti-aircraft crews waiting with fingers on triggers. If this bomber slipped through, everything else would be meaningless. Range 9 miles, Porter said. Altitude 4,000, low, fast, straight in. Smith leveled off above the target, stealing a final advantage altitude. The fuel gauge hovered just above the bottom edge, 23%, below safe margins. This would be his last attack, no matter how it ended. At 1 mile, he saw it. Another Betty, flying calmly, almost stubbornly, as if its crew believed reaching the target mattered more than surviving the night. Maybe it did. Smith slid into position slightly high, slightly behind. He checked his ammunition enough for 1 clean burst. No second chances, no do-overs. 350, Porter said. Smith steadied the aircraft. The gun sight glowed. His world narrowed to 1 shape, 1 distance, 1 decision. He fired. The cannons thundered 1 final time. Shells ripped through the bomber's center section. The wing tore free. Fire erupted instantly, violent and absolute. The aircraft broke apart and vanished into the black below. 4 bombers destroyed. Smith pulled up and turned south. His fuel gauge dipped again, 21%. Barely enough to get home. Behind him, Porter scanned the radar. Nothing. The remaining Japanese aircraft had turned back. The airfields were safe. The men below would wake up alive. But Smith's night wasn't over yet. Now he had to land with almost nothing left in the tanks. Smith had already turned south when the night betrayed him. Behind the Black Widow, the radar screen went quiet. No contacts, no blips, just empty black. For the first time in nearly an hour, the sky felt still. Smith allowed himself a breath. Just one. 4 bombers destroyed. The airfield safe. The mission by every definition complete. Then Porter leaned closer to the scope. Stand by. Static crackled in the headset. The screen flickered. What is it? Smith asked. I've got something, Porter said slowly. It's not coming in from the north. It's already here. Smith's spine tightened. The contact wasn't behaving like a bomber. No steady course, no straight line. It appeared, disappeared, reappeared again, closer each time. No formation. No predictable altitude. Almost as if it were hunting instead of attacking. Smith checked his mirrors. Nothing. Fuel 20%. Could be ground clutter, Porter said, unconvinced. Or the blip jumped. Range 3 miles, Porter said sharply. Closing fast. Smith felt it then. The cold realization every night fighter feared. This wasn't a mission anymore. This was an ambush. Smith pushed the throttles forward, scanning the darkness, knowing one terrible truth. Whatever was out there didn't need bombs to change the night. It just needed him to make one mistake. Smith had already turned the Black Widow toward home when Porter's voice cut through the cockpit, again sharp and unavoidable. A new contact, north, 7,000 feet, closing. Smith glanced at the fuel gauge sliding past. 19%, the numbers telling him exactly what every instinct already knew. Turn back now or you might not make it. McGuire Field was still miles away, the ocean black and endless beneath him. One mistake at this fuel level wouldn't mean an emergency landing. It would mean disappearing without a trace. But the contact was between him and the airfields. If it was a bomber, it would slip through unchallenged, undoing everything he just fought for. Dead engineers, burning tents, a mission technically successful and morally ruined. Smith didn't hesitate any longer. He banked the P-61 back into the darkness, engines steady, thirsty, unforgiving. Porter guided him in, calm as ever, calling ranges as the distance collapsed. 3 miles. 2. 1. At 800 yards, Smith saw it clearly and felt his pulse spike. Not a bomber. A Nakajima Ki-84 Frank. A fighter. Fast, agile, deadly. In daylight, it could tear a Black Widow apart. But this wasn't daylight, and the Frank pilot was blind. Smith slid in low and behind, invisible, patient, letting the fighter fly straight and level as it hunted for enemies it couldn't see. He closed to 300 yards. The fuel gauge dipped again, 17%. One chance. One burst. Miss, and he wouldn't survive the night. He centered the gun sight. Records meant nothing now. Survival meant nothing if men died below. Smith squeezed the trigger. The cannon shattered the silence. Shells ripped through the fighter's tail and engine. Flames erupted, black smoke spiraling upward as the aircraft rolled and dove. At 3,000 feet, the pilot bailed out a white parachute, snapping open against the black sky. Smith watched for a heartbeat, then turned south for the final time. Fuel 15%. The fighting was over. Now he just had to make it home alive. The Black Widow droned south alone. Again, engine steady but starving. Smith's fuel gauge hovered at 15%. No buffer, no margin, no second attempt. McGuire Field was close now, but night flying had a final cruelty to offer. As the island rose on Porter's radar scope, Smith searched the darkness ahead, straining for the faint glow of runway lights. He dropped altitude, easing the aircraft down, every movement deliberate. Fuel slipped to 13%. Still enough. Barely. Then the lights vanished. All of them. One moment they were there, dim yellow dots, cutting a thin line through the dark. The next, nothing. Absolute blackness. Smith was less than 3 miles out, 800 feet above the ground, flying toward a runway he could no longer see. There would be no go-around, no diversion. The nearest alternate field was nearly 100 miles away. He didn't have the fuel to try. Smith tightened his grip on the controls. Porter suggested the only option left: land by instruments. The radar altimeter became Smith's eyes, feeding him numbers instead of visuals. Every foot mattered. Too high, he'd overshoot. Too low, he'd hit coral or jungle at speed. Fuel dropped to 9%. Smith lined up on what he believed was the runway centerline, trusting compass, heading memory, and instinct. He lowered the gear. 3 green lights. He dropped full flaps, slowing the Black Widow as much as he dared. The altimeter ticked down, 300 feet, 200, 100. Smith reduced power. The aircraft sank into the dark, blind and silent, except for the engines and the ticking of fuel he no longer had. 50 feet, 25. Then the wheels slammed into crushed coral. The landing was hard, but it held. Smith braked until the aircraft shuddered to a stop, fuel gauge trembling at 6%. When the engines finally shut down, the silence was overwhelming. Smith sat there for a moment, hands shaking not from fear, but from exhaustion. The night was over, and against every equation he had survived it. When Smith finally climbed down from the cockpit, his legs barely held him. Not from fear, but from the weight of what the night had demanded. 63 minutes earlier, he'd taken off into darkness with no guarantee of coming back. Now the Black Widow sat silent behind him, empty of fuel, scarred only by exhaustion. Ground crews stared at the aircraft in disbelief. 5 intercepts, 5 confirmed kills, no damage, no casualties on the ground. The numbers didn't feel real yet. Intelligence officers arrived quickly, asking for times, headings, altitudes, trying to trap chaos inside neat lines of paperwork. Smith answered calmly, almost mechanically. He remembered everything. The night had burned itself into him. By morning, wreckage would be found exactly where he said it would be. Bombers shattered in the sea, a fighter lost to flame and gravity. Proof that the impossible had happened. But Smith didn't celebrate. Below those runways, engineers kept working. Trucks rolled. Concrete dried. The invasion timetable never slipped. Thousands of men would land at Lingayen Gulf weeks later under air cover that only existed because this night had ended differently. Smith never wrote a memoir, never chased headlines. When the war ended, he went home carrying the memory of a night when radar replaced moonlight and responsibility outweighed fear. The aircraft that saved those lives wouldn't survive the peace. It would be scrapped, its markings erased. The night would fade into reports and archives. But for one stretch of darkness over Muro, the war balanced on a single cockpit, and one man refused to let it fall. By sunrise, the war had already moved on. Reports were typed, kills were confirmed. Numbers were entered into ledgers that would outlive the men who wrote them. Major Carroll Smith's name briefly rose to the top 7 confirmed victories, all within 24 hours. The highest scoring American night fighter ace of the war, a record no one else would touch. And then, just as quietly, the spotlight passed. Smith flew more missions. The Black Widow kept hunting in the dark. The war ended. Victory parades marched forward. New aircraft replaced old ones. The airplane that had ruled the night over Muro was stripped, scrapped, erased, its nose art gone, its kill markings lost to a torch. Smith never tried to stop it. He didn't write a book. He didn't tour stages or tell his story for applause. He went home, traded flight gear for civilian clothes, and lived the rest of his life as if that night were simply something that had needed to be done. But history doesn't measure impact by fame, because the runway he saved launched fighters that protected the Lingayen landings. The invasion stayed on schedule. Casualties were reduced. The war ended sooner, by days, maybe weeks, but weeks mattered when people were dying. Most people would never know his name. Yet for one night over one island in total darkness, the outcome of a campaign rested on a cockpit, a radar screen, and a man who refused to turn away. Steel obeyed physics. Radar obeyed mathematics. But what saved those lives was a decision made alone in the dark by someone who never asked to be remembered. And that may be the most American ending of all. Long after the engines cooled and the paperwork was filed away, the meaning of that night kept spreading outward, quietly, invisibly, like radar waves through the dark. The Black Widow proved something over Muro that December night. Not just that technology could change warfare, but that war at its most modern still depended on human judgment. Radar could see what eyes could not. Steel could fly where fear could not. But neither could decide when to turn back or when to press on, with nothing left but minutes of fuel and conviction. The P-61 would go on to serve in every theater. Hundreds were built. Most were forgotten. Nearly all were scrapped. The jet age arrived faster and louder, and the night fighters of World War II faded into footnotes. Only a handful survived in museums, silent reminders of a time when darkness itself was the battlefield. Smith didn't need monuments to validate what he had done. The proof lived elsewhere, in runways completed on time, in aircraft that launched safely weeks later, in soldiers who never knew how close they'd come to dying in their sleep. History often remembers battles. It rarely remembers the nights that made those battles survivable. That is the cruel irony of night war. The better it is fought, the less anyone notices. Yet somewhere in the Pacific archives, the records remain. Times, headings, altitudes, cold data that barely hints at the exhaustion, the pressure, the decisions made in seconds with no applause, waiting at the end. On December 29, 1944, the night tried to win. It failed not because it was challenged by numbers or firepower, but because one crew refused to surrender the dark. And sometimes that is how wars are truly decided. Years later, no one would hear the engines. No one would see the radar glow or feel the weight of those final minutes over the Pacific. The night over Murrow would fade into ink and microfilm, reduced to coordinates and confirmed kills. But its consequences would keep moving forward, silent, irreversible. Because wars are not only decided on beaches or in headlines. They are decided in moments like this one, when someone is tired, alone, nearly empty, and still chooses to act. The men who slept beneath those tents never knew how close the night came. They never saw the bombers that didn't arrive. They never felt the heat of burning wings falling into the sea. And that was the point. Victory, when done right, leaves no witnesses, only survivors. Carroll Smith never asked history to remember him. He didn't shape his legacy with words. He shaped it with decisions made in darkness, with fuel gauges sinking towards zero, with trust in a voice behind him, and a machine that turned radio waves into truth. The Black Widow is gone now. The runway has changed. The island is quiet. But the equation remains timeless. Technology creates possibility. People decide the outcome. On one December night in 1944, the dark believed it could hide destruction. It believed silence meant safety. It was wrong. Because somewhere between the clouds and the ocean, a man chose responsibility over comfort, duty over survival, and action over retreat. And because of that choice, thousands of others lived to see the sunrise. That is not a loud ending. It is a lasting one.